New Jersey, the ship, and then, you know, into Beirut on the beach and everything, and he worked for an admiral. Now this is a big admiral. And the admiral would go to these parties at this big mansion outside of Marseille. What they did was they invited the wild girls, the secretaries, because this went on in Indonesia. My husband had a secretary. Anne Bouchou's husband, Hank, was sleeping with the secretary. My husband was sleeping with the secretary and Anne Bouchou. They were doing, because my husband's wife wasn't there, so they had their ménage à quatre. And of course, my husband was sleeping with Anne Bouchou, who's now, he says, a lesbian, you know, but he was sleeping with her, and, you know, called her right after his wife died the night, you know. And I found the telephone numbers and, you know, her address and her birthday and all these letters he was writing.
Isn't there a disease that runs rampant with these people?
Yeah, yeah. So, but Al Gray, this guy, would guard the parties. Now, how does that make a young guy feel who's got a child? He's guarding an orgy with Israelis. There were Israelis at these parties. Intelligence people. Intelligence? There's not intelligence there. There's perversion. There's psychological, you know. These guys are abnormal. They're adolescent. They're not full, complete people. They can't have normal. Anyway. So he's guarding the parties, and he says, the secretary, the girls come in, they stay till about 11. They're all nude, all nudists. The Earls, Jim and Nancy Earl, my husband, Ty Kroll, most of the chiefs, nudists. Makes it easier, you know, to see the little, you know, it's terrible.
They're nudists in the sense that...
Yeah, they're nudists.
Okay, so they have whatever.
Freedom.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I see.
Freedom.
It's really kind of religious, isn't it?
Yeah.
With them.
Yeah. But the girls, the women leave at about 11 o'clock. This is what he said. I mean, I knew the girls were there because I'd already talked to the French girl. And he said, well, you know, what they do is the women leave at about 11 o'clock, maybe 1 o'clock, and the guys all stay around there. And it's just the ritual. This is what they do. So, and then I found out.
These are the guys that send their boys to war.
Yeah, these are the big guys. Then I found out, because my husband would mention this guy and that guy, you know, that he went to school with. Bob Edwards is involved with this stuff. But the guy who recruited him, Charles Caddock, who was a well-known homosexual, who was the, quote, head teacher but the bodyguard for the Saudi boys. See, the Saudi boys were encouraged to do this, to corrupt them. They were corrupting Muslims who would not have done this ordinarily. The parties at Aramco, they would give the young boys, get them really drunk, and encourage Muslim sons to do this kind of stuff.
Muslim sons who would have a strong tendency toward morality.
Yes.
And to abhor this kind of
That's right.
But if they could get them drunk and loaded enough that they would do
Yes.
this one time,
Yes.
then they would gain a controlling edge on these guys.
And who do you think did it? Charles Caddock and Borland, these guys, Alexander Robinson, Cheeseborough, who was the headmaster. The Saudis bought Russell House at the Hun School in Princeton. They brought over Mohammed Faisal and, you know, Khalid Saud. They didn't really go to classes or whatever. And who was the young man who was partying with them? My husband, George Griggs. Who was in the group with them? Einstein. I mean, my husband was partying with Albert Einstein. I said, well, you know, I didn't.
And when would this have been? At what age in his life?
52, 53, 54, 55. I believe he said that Mohammed came over in 54. It was right after the murder, the poisoning of the one who was really good.
Okay. So your husband would have been a young guy, 18, 19 years old?
Oh, he was only, when they first got to him, he was in high school. So he was He was ninth grade.
And he would be there?
He was at the school with these homosexuals. They sent his parents to California. Got him a little Boy Scout job, his father. He didn't see his parents for 8 solid years. And this is amazing.
I see. So then the transference is these people become your parents. They're the ones you look up to.
Yeah, but they're doing things to you.
Sure. They're sodomizing you.
Of course.
And Albert Einstein was actually...
Was in that homosexual group, bisexual group. Absolutely. Camus. Sartre. Now, Camus did not, I don't believe my husband actually met Camus, but Camus was a lover of his French teacher at Princeton. Not Todeve, not the one who helped him with his paper whom he had an affair with. And I was told that by normal roommates, whom he had later on, and by another roommate. They knew George was doing this stuff. George was, he was a cheerleader. He was a French major.
Were there any other young teenagers from that particular setting
Yes.
that were also being cultivated?
Bob Edwards, who's a Marine Corps colonel, was part of that group. And my husband met with Bob Edwards in high school. Bob Edwards went on to Fort Benning. He was in psychological warfare. In fact, he was involved with the subterfuge in after I was injured and my husband socked me in the breast, and I had to have surgery because he'd already broken a leg, and I was starting to document the violence. But I'm such an upfront person, and all I wanted him to say was, "I'm sorry, Kay, I did this." But I was trying to do like they said Rosie Greer did. You put a mirror, if you're battering your wife, you put a mirror up in front of yourself or a photograph, and you try to imprint the lower brain, because I wanted to save his soul. I mean, this guy had murdered his first wife, battered her to death. I mean, he dragged her body back. I mean, it was just, Sue had a cerebral hemorrhage. That's too much for me to get into. But he was doing that to me, and I stopped him from drinking, thinking this would stop the battering. But I started taking notes, taping things, while he'd go in these rages, because I wanted somebody to know. I wanted somebody to help me so I wouldn't die. And I'd had surgery, I'd had broken bones, and I was trying to reach out for some help. And so I was trying to get him to realize what he was doing to me. And I told him, I said, "George, I know you did this to Sue. Do you really want me dead? This is..." But he started getting scared, and he was cool.
Did he ever admit to you that he was responsible for his first wife's death?
He came, he said, he admitted that they didn't get along. He admitted that he didn't love her.
That he battered her.
He admitted that he'd hurt her. He admitted that he dragged her body back after she supposedly collapsed at dinner. Now, this is a 200-pound woman. She's huge. Because she's not happy. She's sleeping with her dog. She doesn't sleep with her husband because he's too busy sleeping with other people. He doesn't find her attractive. He's sleeping with Nancy Earl, and it's just the most crazy. And she loves him because he's handsome. And what is she going to do? She's never worked a day in her life. Her mother loves him. It's like me. Who would believe you that a handsome, wonderful guy? Oh, but George is so nice. So, and this is what the wives go through. They know that it'll be hard. So, the guys just, what George did was, he had clout in the State Department, and they knew that I just loved showing people around. So he would plan something that I just had to do. I would be hooked, like a hook in a fish. And he had some dignitaries who came over from, where did they come from? They were parliamentarians from, I think these were from one of the Latin American countries, Panama. And of course we had to go to Richmond So I had to stay overnight with them, and George didn't want to go with me. And it just so happened that Bob Edwards, his Army colonel friend, invited him to come up and meet with some of the guys, you know, at New Hope, Pennsylvania, or Bucks County, or wherever it was. Well, he had already been talking to Phil Holwager about the abuse, because I had gone in for surgery, and I thought it was very unusual that Phil Holwager was there during the surgery, kind of holding George's hand. It wasn't for me. Mm-hmm. It was to make sure George didn't fall apart, to make sure that the doctor, I didn't say anything when I was under sodium pentothal, you know, covering George's ass, excuse my French. But he was the chaplain at Fleet Marine Force Atlantic and was the chaplain for Sue's funeral. He knew what George had done. And he runs around on his wife, you know, he's playing golf all the time. He and George were playing golf with this single woman, and I found out, and I said, what are you all, you know, he's the so-called chaplain, and he went to school with Gary Hart. He was a classmate of Gary Hart's at Yale. Mm-hmm. And, you know, a colleague of Pat Robertson's. That's why he, you know, not that saying that Pat Robertson does that kind of thing. I don't think he does. I'm sure he doesn't. But they went to Yale, mm-hmm. and so forth. But so George was a violent man, and he started knowing that I was sort of going to do something. So he started doing certain things. And, you know, now looking back, mm-hmm. I can see why. Because of the violence, he wouldn't have been able to use his .45 anymore if he'd been
convicted of battering.
Yeah, he would not have been able to use his pistol anymore, carry it. So they wanted to make sure that he was protected. So the wife has got to go. The wife is way down the totem pole. It doesn't matter what wife, and that's the reason the wives are so afraid, the Marine wives. And they all talk cryptically, and, you know, they even talk outside the house.
Talk cryptically. There's code words and double meaning words. And
yeah.
What's 10 p.m. Saturday TV?
Your satellite, remember? Don't we got to switch it to?
Not on Saturdays.
Sorry.
Sorry.
Sorry, okay, just I'll remind you. I thought
Okay.
we used to talk about earlier.
Yeah. Okay. Well, actually, I think this pretty well sums up this segment. Unless is there anything you can think of? I can see where we'll do this again sometime as this develops on. Tomorrow, let's see, tomorrow's Sunday. Monday, what we'll do, is there always, if we make a copy of this, so there's two of these?
Yeah,
in
sure.
case something happens
Absolutely.
to you and yours.
Sure.
Okay, we'll make copies of this stuff
Sure.
tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
Don't lose that.
No. But this is interesting. It talks about sabotage, subterfuge. This is the standard Army book teaching men to lie, cheat, steal, be peeping toms on women. Now, if they don't allow women in there and they can peeping tom all the wives they want, they don't need movies, pornography. They, you know, and they go on all the TADs they want.
TAD is a...
Just take off, just tell their wife they're going. And they can lie, because it's all secret. Mm-hmm. We don't have to tell our wives anything.
And it's intelligence, it's work.
Oh, it's intelligence. Yeah, sure, it's intelligence. That's interesting. But this is really, I mean, you know, this is full of, and this is just a mild SEAL commando
Can
T-shirt.
you hold it up to the camera?
Yeah.
For me to
That's a T-shirt that a SEAL would wear.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
leave it up for a minute.
I played Nancy Drew, Miss Marple, and I infiltrated, if that's the word you could use, the SEAL reunion this year. They spent a lot of money